Hello, Classroom 9. I'm back with some social studies today. So, again, this is all on the document that I sent you, that you obviously clicked this link on. So, we're going to do another Scholastic article and talk a little bit about some U.S. history. So, let me just get my screen shared. And we're going to start with the video, the American Revolution. So if you are doing this, would rather do this by yourself, you can find it at the bottom of the page. But if you're doing it with me, then it will just play right on this video that we're going to be making here. So sit back. I think it's only about 3 minutes, and this will be the start of our lesson.
Today, the United States is known as the land of the free and the home of the brave. But how did the United States come to be? It started with the Declaration of Independence and ended with a bloody battle against one of the world's most powerful nations. Here's what you need to know about the American Revolution. Two battles near Boston started the war. During the 1600s and 1700s, settlers from Great Britain established 13 colonies in America. Over time, the colonists became fed up with King George III's taxes. And when the king sent thousands of soldiers to America to enforce his rules, clashes between colonists and the British troops became all too common. Many colonists wanted to break free from Britain, so the colonies formed militias to prepare for war. On April 19, 1775, shots were fired at the battles of Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. The American Revolution had begun. A sneak attack helped lead the colonies to victory. On July 4, 1776, colonial leaders issued the Declaration of Independence, officially declaring America its own nation. But King George wasn't going to let his colonies go without a fight. Less than 2 months after declaring independence, the colonists were losing in a big way. They began to doubt their leader, General George Washington. But on Christmas night, 1776, Washington led his army across the icy Delaware River, launching a sneak attack on British troops in New Jersey. That victory turned things around. They also had a secret weapon, the Culper's spy ring. On Washington's orders, a group of men spied on British troops in and around New York City. They provided Washington with valuable information on the British Army's plans. The spies also found out that one of Washington's most trusted generals was a traitor. Washington considered Benedict Arnold one of his best soldiers. In 1779, Arnold began selling secrets to the British. Using secret codes written in invisible ink, Arnold used his wife to pass letters back and forth with the enemy. Just as he was on the brink of getting caught, Arnold escaped to the other side and became a general for the British troops. The British finally waved the white flag. The last major battle of the Revolution took place in Yorktown, Virginia in 1781. For 11 days, the Continental Army attacked the British. Finally, the British agreed to Washington's terms, and the long battle was over. On September 3, 1783, officials signed the Treaty of Paris. The American Revolution was officially over, and the United States of America was finally an independent country. Now it's your turn. Can you find another fascinating fact about the American Revolution?
Alrighty, so there's our video. Let me get it so that you guys can see me again. Camera and screen. Alright, so, sorry about that. We are going to read an article about the road to revolution. So if you look here, and again, like I said, you can do it this way, or you can do it this way, but we are going to read through this and then finish off with the reading check. So, the Red Revolution. 250 years ago, trouble was brewing in Boston. It would forever change our country. On February 22nd, 1770, a cold wind whipped through Boston, Massachusetts. But the bitter chill didn't stop an angry mob from gathering outside a local shop that was selling British goods. Among the protesters was 11-year-old Christopher Sider. A man named Ebenezer Richardson lived near the shop. We're up here. He was a loyalist, a colonist who was loyal to King George III of Great Britain. Richardson tried to break up the protest, but the crowd quickly turned on him. They yelled and hurled stones as they chased him into his home. Moments later, a gunshot rang out. Richardson had fired into the group. Christopher fell to the ground and died later that night. His death would help spark a revolution. So, let's pause there for a second. Think about that. So, most of you are older than 12. I think we have like one or two 11-year-olds, but most of you are older than 11. But think about being that age, because you were all there at one point, and protesting, and then something like that happening to you. Or think about how maybe your parents would feel, or your siblings, or your friends, how they would feel if something like that happened to you. Another thing to think about would be like how brave you have to be that old, to realize what's right and wrong, to realize that you wanted to fight against things that were wrong. So I just think that's really interesting that someone that young was ready to take a stand. Also, Massachusetts, who remembers what part of our 13 colonies? Is that New England, the middle states, or the southern states? Pause for a second, think about it. Maybe comment it below or email Miss S with your answer. If you look up on the map here, I don't know if I can, I can open it. This is where Boston, Massachusetts is, right here where the 2 yellow stars are. Right around there. So, which part of the 13 original colonies would that be? We learned about that in class, guys. Alright, let's continue. Troubled times. At the time, Massachusetts was one of the 13 colonies ruled by Great Britain. In 1763, the British had won a long war against France, but 7 years of fighting had left Britain with a huge amount of debt. To raise money, the British passed a series of taxes on the colonists. They were charged extra fees for goods such as sugar, glass, tea, and paper. Many colonists were outraged. After all, they had no representatives in the British government and no say in how these taxes were created. Their rallying cry became "No taxation without representation." Many were fed up with the king's tyranny. Why should they have to answer to someone who had never set foot in America? So tyranny would be like the unfair treatment of people. So things that wouldn't be fair. We're down here. To help enforce its unpopular laws, Britain sent troops to the colonies in 1768. In Boston, 2,000 soldiers were supposed to keep the peace. Instead, angry townspeople regularly clashed with the soldiers in the streets. Many colonists boycotted or refused to buy or sell goods shipped from Britain. They also harassed merchants who ignored the boycott, like the owner of the shop where Christopher had been protesting. Up here on the top, fired up. About 2,000 people came to grieve at Christopher's funeral. That grief turned to anger and pushed hatred of the British to dangerous new levels. In Boston, things were at a breaking point, explains historian Nat Shadley. Violence would erupt again on March 5th, just a week after the funeral. On that cold moonlit night, a teenage boy shouted insults at a British soldier. The soldier responded by striking the boy with his musket. Soon a mob gathered and began throwing snowballs and stones at the soldiers. More British troops arrived, but they were badly outnumbered. Then, suddenly, bang! In the scuffle, one of the soldiers fired his musket into a crowd. After a few seconds of silence, more soldiers fired. In all, 5 colonists were killed. And then the last section here, a new nation. This incident became known as the Boston Massacre. It was a turning point in the colonists' fight to be free from British rule. Afterward, there was no way to make peace within the British Empire, says Shadley. Across the colonies, tension with the British slowly continued to build. In 1775, the first battles of the American Revolution were fought. The colonists' long fight for independence had begun, and a new nation would soon be born. And then, as a good reader, it's always good to look at like the little extra boxes and the little maps and things. So we already kind of looked at the 13 colonies map. We've discussed this over and over again. You guys all did your colony projects. So I think we're okay not really looking at this one. But let's go ahead and start up here, the fight for freedom. So this says the first shots of the American Revolution were fired at Lexington and Concord, 2 villages near Boston, on April 19th, 1775. So when I pulled this map up, and now I'll pull it up again, these 2 stars are where the first shots of the American Revolution happened. I don't know that I can zoom in on that. If I could, I would, guys. But that would be close to one of the biggest cities of that time. A new leader. Shortly after the war started, George Washington was named commander of the Continental Army. On July 4th, 1776, also the day that we became the United States of America, representatives from the colonies approved the Declaration of Independence. So that was the document that they created to say, we're done with you, Britain. We're our own country now. And then last one, it says surrender. On October 19th, 1781, the British surrendered at the Battle of Yorktown. 2 years later, the U.S. and Britain signed a treaty officially making the U.S. its own territory. So, if you look here, we signed the Declaration of Independence in 1776. That's when we were done. That's when we said we want to be our own country. Britain didn't let that happen until 5 years later, in 1781. So for 5 years, the United States and Britain were fighting over basically our freedom and our having our own country. And then if you look down at the bottom here, the little cartoon, British soldiers were often called redcoats because of their uniforms. So this is what they wore. This guy here, it says, Crispus Attucks is believed to have been the first person killed in the Boston Massacre. So that was the one that we talked about in this section. That was where the 5 colonists were murdered. And then finally, colonists who wanted freedom from Britain were known as patriots. So we still use that word today. And it kind of is related to like what we refer to it as today. Patriots in the United States are people that believe in what we have, what we want. And patriots back then were fighting for what we wanted, freedom. Alrighty, then last but not least, we just have our little form to fill out. So again, you'll just open up the hyperlink for that. It should say reading check, the road to revolution at the top. Also, if for some reason you can't get to the article, there's also a hyperlink here that you can use to get to this page. So I tried to make everything as accessible as we could. So, or if you need to go back, you can just click up here. Alrighty. First one, of course, is type your name, Miss S. Describe what happened on March 5th, 1770, before shots were fired. So going back to our article, that's going to be in the first paragraph. On February 22nd, 1770. I'll give you a couple seconds just to look through that. Alrighty. Number 2. The fight for freedom. Which of these events happened first? So, what I'm going to also tell you is that if you are in the normal view, I believe this box here that says the fight for freedom, this is where you can find some answers. Also, in the presentation view, it would be in this box up here. So for each of these, you're listing them what happened first, second, third, fourth, and then fifth. There's a drop-down box here, and you go through and pick which one happened first. Some of these also, I'm going to give you a hint, some of these also have dates on them. So look at the dates, because it's not going to make sense if you have 2 years later in 1783 as the first thing, because chronologically that doesn't make sense. So go ahead and fill out number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6. And again, here's your options for all of them. They all have the same options. I'm not trying to trick you here. Just use common sense. Use what we read about in this box or on the box in this one, and you guys should be okay. If you need to pause to continue, that's perfectly okay. When you're done, you're just going to submit this, and then you will be all done with social studies for the day. I will see you guys tomorrow for another lesson in science. So we'll see you soon. Miss you guys.